The Zyrathi Empire had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had conquered 400 worlds. They had defeated species with great technology and powerful weapons. Every race they met had fallen to their mighty fleets. The Zyrathi believed they were the greatest warriors in all of existence, so when their scout ships found a small blue planet called Earth, they expected nothing special. The humans had only recently learned to travel between stars. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were primitive. The Zyrathi High Command looked at the reports and laughed. This would be the easiest conquest in their long history. Fleet Admiral Vornash stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around him floated 300 warships. Each one was bigger than anything humans had ever built. The fleet moved through space like a swarm of metal insects, blocking out the stars as they approached the Sol system. "Send the message," Vornash commanded. His voice was cold and certain. He had done this many times before. The communication officer pressed the controls. Across all frequencies, in all human languages, the message went out. "People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Zyrathi Galactic Empire. You will surrender all weapons. You will accept our rule. Resistance is foolish. You have one rotation of your planet to respond." Vornash waited. He expected fear. He expected begging. He expected immediate surrender. Instead, he got something strange. A human appeared on his screen. The creature wore a formal suit and looked tired. Behind him, Vornash could see other humans arguing loudly with each other. "Yes. Hello," the human said. He rubbed his eyes. "This is Secretary General Morrison of the United Nations. We have received your message. We need to inform you that we require more time to deliberate." "Deliberate?" Vornash leaned forward. "There is nothing to deliberate. You will surrender." "Well, you see, there are procedures," the human explained. "We need to consult with member nations. There are committees that must meet. Also, our actual military forces are currently unavailable for immediate deployment. Budget reviews. You understand? Very complicated." Vornash stared at the screen. In 400 conquests, no species had ever asked for more time because of committees and budget reviews. "You have no choice," Vornash growled. "We will take your outer colony as demonstration of our power. The red planet you call Mars. Then you will see that resistance is death." The human Secretary General sighed. "I really wish you wouldn't do that. There are civilians there, mining operations, but I suppose I cannot stop you at this moment. Please, give us time to organize a proper response." The connection ended. Vornash turned to his officers. They all looked confused. "What strange creatures," one of them said. "They do not even seem afraid." "They are fools," Vornash declared. "They do not understand their danger. Send the invasion force to Mars. Show them what happens to those who do not kneel." 50 Zyrathi warships broke from the fleet. 20,000 Zyrathi warriors prepared for ground assault. They expected to find a small colony of scared workers. They expected easy victory. They were wrong. The first Zyrathi dropship landed near a human mining facility. The warriors rushed out, weapons ready, shouting commands for surrender. A single shot rang out. The lead warrior fell dead. On a hill 300 meters away, a human named Pete lowered his hunting rifle. He was 57 years old. He had come to Mars to work the drills and earn money for his retirement. He had brought his rifle because he liked to shoot at rocks in his free time. "Well," Pete said to himself, "I guess retirement is canceled." More shots followed. From every building, from behind every rock, from inside every vehicle, humans began to fight back. They were not soldiers. They were miners, engineers, mechanics, and cooks. They had pistols bought for personal protection. They had tools that could be used as weapons. They had explosives meant for breaking rocks. Commander Thexal led his unit into the main colony. He expected workers hiding under tables. Instead, he found a woman swinging a heavy wrench at his head. She broke his helmet before his warriors shot her down. "What is happening?" Thexal shouted into his communicator. "Where is their army?" "There is no army," came the reply from orbit. "Scans show only civilian life signs. These are workers." "Commander." Thexal looked at the dead woman. She wore a jumpsuit covered in dirt and grease. Her hands were rough from hard work. There was no uniform, no military marking, no sign that she was a warrior. Yet she had attacked him without hesitation. The battle for Mars lasted 3 weeks. The Xyrathi had better weapons. They had better armor. They had better training. But the humans would not stop fighting. They attacked at night. They set traps. They blew up their own buildings when Xyrathi soldiers entered. They fought with knives when they ran out of bullets. They fought with their bare hands when they lost their knives. Private security contractors, humans who were paid to guard the mining equipment, organized the defense. There were only 600 of them. They trained the miners. They shared weapons. They planned ambushes. When the battle ended, the Xyrathi had lost 8,000 warriors. 8,000 of their best soldiers, dead on the red soil of Mars. They had expected to lose perhaps 100. The humans lost 12,000. Miners, engineers, cooks, doctors, people who had never held a weapon before that month. Fleet Admiral Vornash received the news in silence. Then he made his announcement to the Empire. Mars has fallen to the glory of the Xyrathi dominion. The human defenders fought with unexpected ferocity, but they have been crushed. Their best warriors have died. Earth now stands alone and defenseless. Victory is certain. Across the Empire, celebrations began. Another world conquered. Another species brought to heel. The Xyrathi people cheered for their brave warriors. On Mars, Commander Thexal walked through the ruins of the colony. He stopped beside a dead human. The body was thin and old. Gray hair, wrinkled skin. Beside the body lay an ancient rifle, the kind used for hunting animals. "This one killed 9 of my warriors," a soldier reported. "We found him on that hill. He would not surrender. He fought until his ammunition was gone. Then he charged us with a knife." Thexal looked at the old human. This was no warrior. This was someone's grandfather. Someone who should have been resting in comfort, not fighting against an empire. He began to write a report. He described what he had seen. He explained that these humans were not soldiers. They were ordinary people, workers, civilians, and they had killed 8,000 Xyrathi warriors. "If these are their civilians," Thexal wrote, "then what are their soldiers like?" He sent the report to High Command. They did not respond. They were too busy celebrating their victory. Far away, on Earth, the governments were still meeting. Committees were still discussing. Budgets were still being reviewed. Generals were looking at maps and making plans that would take months to execute. The Secretary General received the news about Mars. He closed his eyes and felt great sadness for the people who had died. Then he called an emergency session. "We need to respond," he said to the assembled leaders. "Our people fought and died. We owe them justice. The military needs 6 months to fully mobilize." A general replied, "We have procedures, training schedules, equipment that needs to be transported. Then start the process," the Secretary General ordered. "And pray that those miners bought us enough time." None of them truly understood what had happened. None of them realized that the Xyrathi thought the war was already over. None of them knew that the Empire believed humanity's army had already been defeated. The misunderstanding had begun, and it would only grow worse. The news about Mars spread across Earth like fire. Every screen showed the same images: the destroyed colony, the dead miners, the alien ships hovering over the red planet like hungry birds waiting for more prey. People were angry. They were scared. But mostly, they were angry. In a small town in Texas, a man named Robert Chen watched the news with his 2 sons. Robert was 62 years old. He had served in the military 40 years ago. Now he ran a hardware store and spent his weekends teaching his boys to hunt deer. "Dad," his older son asked, "what are we going to do?" Robert looked at his gun cabinet. Inside were 7 rifles, 3 shotguns, and 2 pistols. He had collected them over his whole life. He had never thought he would use them for war. "I don't know yet," he said. "But I'm not going to sit here and watch." All across the world, people like Robert were thinking the same thing. Retired soldiers, hunters, sport shooters, martial arts teachers, history enthusiasts who owned old weapons and knew how to use them. They watched the news and they made decisions. The governments were still talking. The military was still organizing. But ordinary people were already moving. Maria Santos was a cargo ship captain. She flew supplies between Earth and the Moon. Her ship was old and slow, but it could carry 50 people and their equipment. When she heard about Mars, she sent out a message to everyone she knew. "I'm going to Mars. Anyone who wants to come, meet me at Luna Station in 3 days. Bring whatever you can fight with." 47 people showed up. Some brought guns. Some brought knives. One man brought a crossbow he had built himself. An old woman brought homemade explosives that she had learned to make from the internet. "Are we really doing this?" someone asked. Maria nodded. "Those aliens think they won. Let's show them they were wrong." Across the solar system, similar scenes played out. Private companies offered their experimental spacecraft. Amateur radio operators set up communication networks. Engineers designed weapons in their garages. Chemists mixed explosives in their kitchens. People who had never met each other came together with one simple goal: fight back. Commander Thexal stood on the bridge of his ship above Mars. He had been ordered to hold the planet until reinforcements arrived. He expected nothing. The human military was too slow, too weak. They had already lost. Then his sensors detected something strange. "Commander," an officer reported, "we are seeing multiple ships approaching from Earth. Approximately 200 vessels." Thexal felt a moment of concern. 200? What type of ships? Warships? The officer looked confused. "No, sir. They appear to be cargo ships, transport vessels, civilian craft. Some of them seem to be personal yachts." Yachts? Thexal could not believe what he was hearing. "They are sending yachts to attack us?" "It appears so, sir. Also, several ships that seem to be used for tourism, and one that our database identifies as a museum piece. It is over 100 years old." Thexal watched his screen as the strange fleet approached. It was the most disorganized thing he had ever seen. Ships flew in random patterns. They did not maintain formation. Some of them were barely functional. One ship was trailing smoke from its engines. "This is not an army," Thexal said quietly. "This is a mob." He was right. It was not an army. It was 50,000 angry humans who had decided they were not going to wait for their government to act. They called themselves the Irregulars. And they had no formal training, no unified command, and no real plan. What they did have was rage. The Irregulars landed on Mars in chaos. Ships crashed because their pilots had never landed on another planet before. People argued about what to do. Groups went in different directions. There was no strategy, but the Xyrathi had spread their forces thin to control the whole planet. They had expected no resistance. When thousands of armed humans suddenly appeared, attacking from every direction, they did not know how to respond. Robert Chen found himself leading a group of 30 people. They had met on the ship and decided to stay together. None of them had military training except Robert and 2 others, but all of them knew how to shoot. "We move quiet," Robert told them. "We find small groups of aliens. We hit them hard and fast. Then we disappear." It was not a sophisticated strategy, but it worked. The Xyrathi were used to fighting armies. They knew how to handle organized troops with clear command structures. They did not know how to handle thousands of independent groups that attacked without warning and vanished without trace. Maria Santos became famous for what she did next. She flew her cargo ship directly at a Xyrathi cruiser, waited until the last moment, then ejected in an escape pod. Her ship, loaded with mining explosives, crashed into the cruiser and destroyed it completely. "Worth it," she said as she floated in space waiting for rescue. That was for everyone on Mars. The guerrilla war lasted for months. The Irregulars took back colony after colony. They freed prisoners. They captured weapons. They learned from their mistakes and got better at fighting. Commander Thexal documented everything. He wrote reports every day. He described how humans fought without fear. He explained that they used tactics he had never seen before. He warned that these people were dangerous. "They do not fight like soldiers," he wrote. "They fight like cornered animals. They use tricks and traps. They sacrifice themselves to kill just one of us. They never stop. They never surrender. I do not understand them." High Command did not listen. They sent more troops. 3 additional fleets arrived at Mars, carrying 100,000 warriors. The greatest force the Empire had sent against any species. "Now we will crush them," the High Admiral declared. "The human resistance will be destroyed." But the Irregulars did not behave like a normal enemy. When large forces came, they scattered and hid. When the forces spread out to search, they attacked from behind. They poisoned water supplies. They sabotaged vehicles. They turned the whole planet into a death trap. The old woman with the homemade explosives became a legend. She had been a chemistry teacher before she retired. Now she taught other humans how to make bombs from common materials. The Xyrathi learned to fear any building, any vehicle, any object that might explode. One night, Thexal captured a human fighter. The man was wounded and could not escape. Thexal wanted answers. "Why do you fight?" he asked. "You cannot win. We have more ships, more soldiers, better weapons. Your government has abandoned you. Why do you continue?" The human laughed. Blood came from his mouth, but he laughed. "Abandoned us? Friend, our government doesn't even know we're here. We didn't ask permission. We just came." Thexal stared at him. "You came without orders? Without military command?" "We're not military. I'm a plumber. The guy who shot your captain yesterday? He's a dentist. The woman who blew up your supply depot? She taught kindergarten." The human kept laughing until he died. Thexal stood alone for a long time after that. He thought about what the human had said. These people were not soldiers. They were plumbers and dentists and teachers. They had no orders. They had no plan. They had simply decided to fight, and so they fought, and they were winning. He sent another report to High Command. This time, he begged them to reconsider their strategy. He warned them that something was very wrong. He told them that the Zyrathi did not understand what they were facing. Again, they did not listen. They were too proud. They had never lost a war. They would not start believing they could lose now. On Earth, the real military was finally getting ready. Generals had made their plans. Soldiers had completed their training. Ships had been loaded with weapons. After months of preparation, humanity's actual army was about to enter the fight. The irregulars had done what they set out to do. They had bought time. They had hurt the enemy. They had proven that humans would not surrender quietly. Now it was time for the professionals. High Ambassador Kethran was the most experienced diplomat in the Zyrathi Empire. He had negotiated the surrender of 30 species. He knew how to break the spirit of conquered peoples. He knew the right words to make them accept their defeat. The Emperor himself sent Kethran to Earth with a simple mission: make the humans understand that resistance was useless. The Empire had won. It was time to discuss terms of surrender. Kethran traveled to Earth on the fastest diplomatic ship in the fleet. He arrived with full ceremony, expecting to meet broken leaders ready to beg for mercy. Instead, he found something very confusing. The United Nations building was busy. Humans walked everywhere, talking on devices, carrying papers, arguing with each other. Nobody seemed afraid. Nobody seemed defeated. If anything, they seemed annoyed by his presence. Ambassador Kethran, a human woman, said. She wore a formal uniform and did not bow. "I am General Catherine Brooks. I will take you to the Secretary General." "General?" Kethran repeated. "You are military?" "Yes. Commander of the United Earth Defense Force." "Well, co-commander. We're still sorting out the command structure. Politics, you understand." She smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Follow me, please." As they walked through the building, Kethran observed everything. He saw maps on walls showing the Sol system. He saw humans in uniform meeting in rooms, pointing at screens, making notes. He saw young officers running with messages. This did not look like a defeated nation. "Your forces on Mars continue to cause trouble," Kethran said carefully. "But surely you understand that the Empire will eventually crush all resistance. We have unlimited soldiers. You do not." General Brooks stopped walking. She turned to face him. Her eyes were cold. "Ambassador, I want to make something clear. The people fighting on Mars are not my forces. They are volunteers, citizens who went to fight without waiting for orders. Frankly, they're making my job more complicated, not less." Kethran did not understand. "They are not your soldiers?" "No. They're civilians. Shopkeepers. Teachers. Retired workers. They grabbed their personal weapons and flew to Mars on their own ships because they were angry." She started walking again. "My forces haven't deployed yet. We're still preparing." "Still preparing?" Kethran felt something cold in his stomach. "You have been at war for 10 months. How can you still be preparing?" "Proper military mobilization takes time, Ambassador. We have procedures, training requirements, equipment that needs to be manufactured and transported. We don't just throw people at a problem and hope for the best." They reached a large meeting room. Inside sat the Secretary General and dozens of other humans. Some wore suits. Some wore military uniforms. They were arguing loudly about something Kethran could not follow. "Ambassador Kethran of the Zyrathi Empire, General Brooks announced. The room went quiet. Everyone looked at the alien diplomat. Secretary General Morrison stood up. He looked older than in their first communication. Tired, stressed, but not defeated. Ambassador, please sit. We have much to discuss. Kethran sat. He decided to take control of the meeting. Secretary General, I come to offer terms of surrender. The Empire is willing to be generous. Accept our rule, and your people will be treated fairly. Continue to resist, and we will be forced to take harsh action. Morrison nodded slowly. I appreciate you coming in person, Ambassador. But I think there has been a misunderstanding. We are not here to discuss our surrender. We are here to discuss your withdrawal from our territory. Silence filled the room. Withdrawal? Kethran could not believe what he was hearing. We have conquered your colony. We have defeated your forces. You have lost. Have we? Morrison looked at General Brooks. General, what are the current casualty figures? Brooks checked her tablet. The Xyrathi have lost approximately 43,000 soldiers on Mars. Our volunteers have lost around 28,000. The enemy still controls roughly 30% of the planet, down from 100% 6 months ago. Kethran's hearts beat faster. 43,000? The reports he had seen said the war was nearly won. They said human resistance was collapsing. They said victory was certain. That is impossible, he said. Our warriors are the finest in the galaxy. You cannot have killed so many. We didn't kill them, Brooks replied. Our volunteers did. Like I said, my forces haven't deployed yet. Kethran stood up suddenly. You are lying. Those must be your soldiers. No civilian force could cause such damage to the Xyrathi military. Morrison sighed. Ambassador, please sit down. Let me explain something about humans. Kethran sat. His hands were shaking slightly. Humans have been fighting wars for our entire history, Morrison said. We fight each other. We fight constantly. We have had 2 global wars that killed tens of millions of our own people. We have weapons that can destroy entire cities in seconds. We have spent thousands of years learning how to kill each other efficiently. He paused to let that sink in. The people on Mars are not soldiers. They are ordinary people. But ordinary humans know how to fight. We grow up learning about war. We play games about war. We watch entertainment about war. War is part of who we are. We are not proud of this, but it is true. Kethran felt like the room was spinning. How many soldiers do you have? Real soldiers? General Brooks answered. Active military personnel across all nations? Approximately 32 million. Reserves who can be called up? Another 40 million. Civilians with weapons training? We estimate around 500 million. 500 million warriors. Not warriors, Ambassador. Just people who know how to use a gun. Brooks smiled again. That cold smile. Warriors are much rarer. We call them special forces. We have about 300,000 of those. Kethran thought about the reports from Mars. 43,000 Xyrathi dead. And the humans said they had not sent real soldiers yet. Just volunteers. Hobbyists. I need to contact my fleet, he said. His voice was weak. Of course, Morrison agreed. But first, I want you to understand our position. We did not start this war. We did not ask for this conflict. Your empire invaded our territory and killed our people. We will respond. But we are a peaceful species, Ambassador. We do not want to destroy you. We want you to leave. And if we do not leave? The room went very quiet. Every human was looking at Kethran. He saw no fear in their eyes. He saw no mercy either. Then we will make you leave, Morrison said simply. And many more will die. On both sides. We would prefer to avoid that. Kethran contacted the fleet. He told them what he had learned. He begged them to listen. He explained that the Empire had made a terrible mistake. The High Admiral laughed at him. You have been deceived by human lies. They are trying to frighten you. We have nearly defeated them. Victory is close. You have been fighting civilians, Kethran shouted. Untrained volunteers. Their real army has not even arrived yet. Impossible. No species could cause such damage without proper military forces. You are weak, Ambassador. Return to the Empire. We will handle this. The communication ended. Kethran sat alone in the room they had given him. He thought about everything he had seen and heard. He thought about the 43,000 dead Xyrathi warriors. He thought about the humans on Mars, fighting with hunting rifles and homemade explosives, and he thought about the 32 million professional soldiers who were still waiting on Earth. For the first time in his long career, Kethran understood what true fear felt like. He began writing a message to the Emperor himself. It would probably end his career. The Emperor did not like bad news, but Kethran had to try. "Your Majesty," he wrote, "we have made a catastrophic error. The humans we have been fighting are not soldiers. They are civilians. Their actual military numbers over 30 million, and it has not yet engaged. I strongly advise immediate withdrawal from the Sol system before it is too late." He sent the message, then he waited to see if anyone would listen. Nobody did. The United Earth Defense Force launched on a Tuesday morning. It was not dramatic. There were no speeches. There were no ceremonies. The military simply began to move, like a machine that had finally been turned on. 12 carrier groups left Earth orbit. Each carrier was surrounded by 50 support ships, destroyers, cruisers, supply vessels, medical ships, troop transports. They moved in perfect formation, every ship exactly where it should be. Behind them came the second wave, another 12 carrier groups, then the third wave, then the fourth, hundreds of ships, carrying millions of soldiers, supported by thousands of automated drones and weapons platforms. The irregulars on Mars watched the fleet approach. Many of them cried. They had fought for so long, with so little, against so many. Now help had finally come. Robert Chen stood on a hill and watched the lights in the sky. He had lost 40 pounds since arriving on Mars. He had been wounded 3 times. Half of his original group was dead, but he had survived. "Look at that," someone whispered beside him. "That's what a real military looks like." Robert nodded. He felt strange emotions. Relief, pride, and something like sadness. The volunteers had done their job. Now they would step aside and let the professionals finish what they had started. Commander Thexal watched the human fleet on his sensors. He counted the ships. He analyzed their formations. He studied their weapon signatures. With each passing minute, his despair grew deeper. "This is not possible," an officer said. "Where did they hide this fleet? Our scouts never detected such forces near Earth." "They didn't hide it," Thexal replied. "They built it. While we were fighting their civilians, they were building this." The High Admiral refused to retreat. He was proud. He was stubborn. He had never lost a battle. He ordered all Zyrathi forces to form a defensive line and prepare to destroy the human attackers. The first engagement lasted 4 hours. The Zyrathi fought bravely. They always fought bravely. But bravery was not enough against what the humans brought to the battle. Human ships moved in coordinated patterns that Zyrathi commanders could not predict. When Zyrathi vessels attacked one group, another group would appear behind them. When they tried to retreat, they found their escape routes blocked. Every human action was part of a larger plan that the Zyrathi could not see. Electronic warfare blinded Zyrathi sensors, their communications filled with strange noises that made it impossible to hear orders. Missiles came from directions that should have been empty space. Drone swarms attacked like clouds of angry insects, overwhelming point defense systems, and the human weapons were devastating. A single human carrier group faced a Zyrathi fleet of 100 ships. The Zyrathi outnumbered them 10 to 1. The battle ended with 92 Zyrathi ships destroyed. The humans lost 4. The High Admiral died when his flagship exploded. He never understood what had happened. He went to his death still believing that the Empire would eventually win. The remaining Zyrathi fleet scattered and ran. They fled toward the outer system, hoping to escape. Human ships followed them, fast and precise, picking them off one by one. On Mars, the ground campaign began. Human soldiers landed in perfect order. They established bases. They set up supply lines. They coordinated with the irregulars, integrating the volunteers into their command structure. But many irregulars refused to step back. They had been fighting too long. They knew the terrain. They knew the enemy. They wanted to finish what they had started. General Brooks allowed them to continue. She understood. These people had earned their place in the battle. The professional soldiers were different from the volunteers. They did not fight with passion and rage. They fought with cold efficiency. Every action was planned. Every movement was calculated. They advanced across Mars like water flowing downhill. Impossible to stop. Thexal watched his forces crumble. He had tried to warn High Command. He had tried to explain what humans were capable of. Nobody had listened. Now they were dying because of that arrogance. Special forces were the worst. Human special forces operated in small teams, usually 8 to 12 soldiers. They moved without sound. They appeared from nowhere. They killed without hesitation and disappeared without trace. One night, Thexal's entire command staff died. All 12 officers, killed in their sleep. No alarms had sounded. No guards had seen anything. The special forces had entered, done their work, and left like ghosts. Thexal found a note pinned to his door. It was written in perfect Xyrathi script. "We could have killed you too. Consider this a message. Surrender and live. Fight and die. The choice is yours." He read the note many times. Then he gathered his remaining soldiers and surrendered. Across Mars, Xyrathi commanders made similar choices. Some fought to the death. Most chose to live. Within 2 weeks, Mars was completely free. But the humans did not stop there. The fleet pushed outward, chasing the retreating Xyrathi. They captured ships. They destroyed stations. They followed the enemy beyond the Sol system and into Empire territory. Back on Earth, Ambassador Kethran received reports every day. Each report was worse than the last. The humans were winning everywhere. They were not just defending anymore. They were attacking. "Why won't they stop?" a Xyrathi official asked. "We have left their system. Why do they follow us?" Kethran understood, even if his colleague did not. They are sending a message. They want us to know that attacking them has consequences. They want us to fear them so much that we never attack again. But surely they must stop eventually. Their resources are not unlimited. "You still don't understand," Kethran said sadly. "Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. They have entire institutions dedicated to studying war. They have academies where people spend years learning how to fight. They write books about war. They create art about war. For them, war is not just something that happens. It is a science, a profession. Some would even say, an art form." The official looked horrified. "What kind of species treats war as art?" "A very dangerous species," Kethran replied. "A species that should never have been provoked." General Brooks gave a press conference on Mars. She stood in front of the ruins of the original colony, where the first battle had been fought almost a year ago. "Today, Mars is free," she announced. "The enemy has been driven from our system. Our forces are pursuing them to ensure they understand that this must never happen again." A reporter asked, "General, what about the volunteers? The irregulars who fought before the military arrived?" Brooks smiled. This time, it was a warm smile. "Those people are heroes. They held the line when no one else could. They fought against impossible odds and they won. Without them, this victory would not be possible. We owe them everything." In the crowd, Robert Chen listened to the general's words. He thought about the friends he had lost, the fear he had felt, the moments when he had been certain he would die. Had it been worth it? He looked at the sky, now clear of enemy ships. He thought about his sons back on Earth, safe because of what he and others had done. Yes, it had been worth it. The war was not over yet. But the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had shown the galaxy what happened when you attacked them. The Empire would fall. It was only a matter of time. And somewhere, in the ruins of a Xyrathi command center, Commander Thexal began writing a new document. Not a military report this time. A history. He wanted future generations to understand what had happened here. "We came to conquer a primitive species," he wrote. "We found something else entirely. We found a people who had mastered the art of war long before we ever met them. We thought they were weak because they did not show us their strength. We were fools. And we paid for our foolishness with blood." He would spend the rest of his life writing that history. It would become the most important document in the galaxy, but that was later. For now, the war continued. The war lasted 3 more years. Human forces pushed deep into Xyrathi territory. They captured colony after colony. They destroyed fleet after fleet. They did not conquer for empire. They did not take slaves or steal resources. They simply fought until the enemy could not fight anymore. The Xyrathi emperor watched his domain crumble. For 12,000 years, his ancestors had ruled the galaxy. Now, because of one mistake, everything was falling apart. "How did this happen?" he asked his advisors. "We are the greatest empire in history. How can we be losing to a species we had never heard of before?" Nobody had a good answer. The truth was too painful to accept. They had underestimated humans. They had believed their own stories about being the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They had been wrong. Ambassador Kethran was summoned to the Imperial Palace. He had been dismissed from his position after his warnings were ignored. He had spent the last 3 years in quiet exile, watching his predictions come true one by one. "You tried to tell us," the Emperor said. His voice was tired, old, defeated. "You tried to warn us about the humans. I should have listened." "Yes, Your Majesty. You should have. What do I do now? How do I save what remains of my empire?" Kethran had thought about this question for a long time. You ask for peace. You offer everything they want. You hope they are merciful. The Zyrathi do not beg for mercy. We have never surrendered in 12,000 years. Then you will have no empire at all, Your Majesty. The humans will not stop until you make them stop. And the only way to make them stop is to give them what they want. The Emperor closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. The pride was still there, but it was buried under something else. Acceptance, perhaps, or simply exhaustion. Contact the humans. Tell them I wish to negotiate peace. The peace talks took 6 months. Human diplomats were thorough. They wanted to make sure this never happened again. They demanded complete withdrawal from human space. They demanded reparations for the people who had died. They demanded recognition of human sovereignty over their entire home system. Most importantly, they demanded that the Zyrathi tell the truth. "You will announce to the galaxy what happened here," Secretary General Morrison said. He was older now, his hair completely gray. The war had aged him. "You will explain that you attacked a peaceful species without provocation. You will explain that you lost. And you will explain why you lost." The Emperor resisted this demand more than any other. "You want me to humiliate my empire in front of the entire galaxy? We want you to warn the galaxy," Morrison replied. "Other species will think about attacking humanity someday. We want them to know what happens when they do. We want them to know that your victory on Mars was won against miners with hunting rifles. We want them to know that when our real military arrived, your empire fell in 3 years. This will destroy the Zyrathi reputation forever." "Yes," Morrison agreed. "But your people will survive. Your empire will continue. Smaller but alive. Consider the alternative." The Emperor signed the peace agreement. He made the announcement. The whole galaxy heard the truth about what had happened in the Sol system. Humanity had been attacked by the greatest empire in history. They had won, and they had won so completely that the empire had to beg for peace. Other species paid attention, very close attention. Commander Thexal, now simply Thexal the historian, finished his great work. It was called The Human Lesson, and it became required reading for every species in the galaxy. He wrote about the first battle on Mars. He wrote about the volunteers and their impossible courage. He wrote about the misunderstanding that led the Empire to believe they had won. He wrote about the horror of facing a professional human military. He wrote about the fall of an empire that had stood for 12,000 years. But the most famous part of his book was the ending. "Why do humans fight so well?" he wrote. "This question haunted me for years. I studied their history. I examined their culture. I spoke with human prisoners and human diplomats. Finally, I understood. Humans fight well because they have always fought. They fought each other before they fought us. They killed each other by the millions. They destroyed their own cities. They poisoned their own lands. War is in their blood, in their bones, in the very way they think. But here is the strange thing. Humans do not love war. They fear it. They know what war does. They have rules about when to fight and when not to fight. They have laws that limit how wars are conducted. They teach their children that war is terrible. A species that loves war is dangerous. A species that fears war but fights it anyway is more dangerous still. They fight not with joy but with grim determination. They fight to end the fighting, and they will not stop until the enemy cannot threaten them anymore. This is the human lesson. Never start a war with a species that has spent thousands of years trying to stop themselves from fighting. If you force them to fight, they will be very, very good at it, and they will not forgive you for making them use those skills. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The soldiers came home. The volunteers were honored as heroes. New colonies were built to replace the ones that had been destroyed. Humanity looked up at the stars and knew they were safe. Robert Chen went back to his hardware store in Texas. His sons had grown up during the war. Now they were adults with families of their own. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Robert would sit on his porch and look at the sky. He thought about Mars. He thought about the people he had fought beside. He thought about the aliens he had killed. He did not feel proud of what he had done. He did not feel ashamed either. He had done what needed to be done. That was all. Maria Santos became a legend. They built a statue of her at Luna Station, where she had gathered her volunteer fleet. The statue showed her standing beside her old cargo ship, looking toward the stars. Every year, people came to remember the civilians who had fought when no one else would. General Brooks retired after the war. She wrote a book about the campaign, focusing on the cooperation between the military and the irregulars. Victory belonged to everyone, she said in interviews. The volunteers held the line. We finished the job. Neither could have done it without the other. Secretary General Morrison served 2 more terms before retiring. He lived long enough to see the first official diplomatic contact between humanity and other species. The aliens were respectful, very respectful. They had heard the stories about what happened to the Zirathi, and in a small museum on a distant Zirathi world, Thexal spent his final years teaching young people about human history. On his desk sat a single human artifact, a tiny plastic soldier, the kind human children played with. A visitor once asked him about it. A human prisoner gave it to me, Thexal explained. He said it belonged to his daughter. He wanted me to have it so I would remember that even human children play at war. That seems sad, the visitor said. It is, Thexal agreed. But it is also important. This little toy represents everything we failed to understand about humans. They prepare for war from childhood. They study war as a game before they face it as reality. By the time they are adults, fighting is as natural to them as breathing. He held up the tiny plastic figure. It was a soldier with a rifle, frozen forever in a combat pose. We thought we were the greatest warriors in the galaxy, Thexal said. We thought no species could challenge us. We were wrong. And this little toy should remind us, every day, never to make that mistake again. The visitor left, thinking about what they had learned. Across the galaxy, species told stories about the humans. Some of the stories were true. Some were exaggerated. All of them ended with the same warning. Do not provoke Earth. Humanity had not wanted war. They had not asked for conflict. But when war came, they had shown the galaxy exactly what they were capable of. The Empire had claimed triumph that day on Mars. They had celebrated their victory over what they thought was humanity's best warriors. But humans had not sent their army. They had not even sent their soldiers. They had sent miners and engineers and retired workers with personal weapons, and they had won anyway. That was the truth the galaxy would never forget. That was the lesson that would echo through time. That was the story of how humanity announced itself to the stars, not with diplomacy, not with friendship, with a simple message. We did not send our army, and we still beat you. Imagine what happens if we do.